Welcome to another episode of Burn the Talking Points. This is one that we've been waiting to have for quite some time and are really glad that we're able to have this conversation. Really frustrated that we have to have this conversation, but glad that we're able to bring the voices of fire federal workers and fire federal contractors to Marylanders as we talk about what the impact of the Trump administration has been, not just on the country, but here on Maryland. So what folks might not know is Maryland has more exposure than almost any other state to Trump's actions because of our relationship with the federal government. In fact, more federal workers from Maryland have been fired than any other state, 12,700 at the last count. So at the Maryland Democratic Party, we decided, well, we should go talk to the deep state. So we brought the deep state here with us. We have three of those fired federal workers and contractors, and they're going to tell you a little bit about what they experienced, how this is impacting them, their families, their community, and kind of what comes next for them. But before we do that, just a little bit of housekeeping for everyone. Number one, we have a new code for folks at the store. If you go to store.mddems.org, you can get a shirt, you can get sweatshirt, you can get a mug, whatever you need to make sure that you're showing your Maryland Dems pride. If you use the coupon code podcast, you'll get 10% off. And secret, we mark up our stuff very, very little. We barely make any money on the store, unlike most political organizations. So if you use the code podcast, you're getting it almost exactly at cost. The point is to make sure you can get the shirts, the sweatshirts, and show your pride in the Maryland Dems. We're not using it to make money. So use the code podcast and get out there and get a sweatshirt, get a mug, get whatever we have. Maybe next year we'll even have some swimsuits for the summer. Two other announcements. We have our Talkback Tour, which we are announcing this morning. If you're listening to this on Wednesday, Chair Pittman is going to go to all 24 counties and have a time for local Dems, independents, Republicans, whoever to come out and have their voices heard about what's happening in their communities, where they want to see the Democratic Party go. It's going to be a really great opportunity. So if you go to mddems.org/tour, you can read more about when they will be in your community. And finally, if you're interested in running for office, we want to work with you. Reach out to us. Let us know. We are trying to recruit folks in every single seat here in Maryland, and we're going to fill the ballot for the first time ever. So we're going to contest every seat, but we need people to run for office, whether you want to run for local office, congressional, county office, whatever, state office, we need you. So reach out to us. We're going to have a form for you to fill out so we can help get you lined up with a race that makes sense for you. So without further ado, the members of the deep state, welcome. How are you?
Hi.
We're just going to go down quickly. If you can just let the audience know name, where you worked, and maybe like 30 seconds on what kind of work you did there so they can just get kind of an understanding of what we have going on and what this conversation will look like, because you're representing three different agencies. So let's start with Hendrick at NOAA.
Okay. Well, first off, thank you so much for having me here today. I think it's important to share these stories and for people really truly to understand out there, like what is going on, like with this, and how it's going to affect them. I myself, I had actually last year, I had retired after doing 24 years in the U.S. Navy. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And then I went to work after my service. I went to work at NOAA. Simply because I was working at NOAA Satellites. A lot of it because I still wanted to continue my service in a different way. I wanted to still be contributing to, societal good. And I think NOAA is an organization that does a lot of that in a lot of ways people don't understand. Throughout most of my military career and at NOAA, I was a communication specialist. One of my big roles, I did a lot of different projects and roles at NOAA, but one of my biggest roles was essentially helping NOAA improve its communication with its various stakeholders, whether it's like the public, whether it's, people who work in agriculture, who depend off of NOAA data, people who work in fisheries, emergency managers, and just really help improve that communication, whether it's through social media, whether it's through articles or other communication products. Here I am.
Well, thank you for joining us. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist guy, but I'm going to throw one out there. The Apple weather data has been terrible lately. It has been so inaccurate. I'm going to blame the cuts on NOAA, and I think everyone else should blame it too.
I think I've been joked around with my wife too. I think even recently here in Maryland, I feel like the weather apps used to be much more accurate, and now they're not. One of the things,
So it's not just me who's
no, I think I feel that too. I actually have a friend of mine who's a pilot, and he, even because NOAA feeds data to the to the FAA and to the airlines as well, and he actually told me that it seems like lately, even like when they're flying, it seems like the weather data is not accurate. And it's funny you mentioned that, because a lot of people sometimes have told me like, well, do we really need NOAA, because I have the AccuWeather app and or weather.com or Weather Underground. But guess where all those applications get their data
all
from?
NOAA.
They get their data from NOAA. It's actually one of the best like business models out there. You get your data for free. They just repackage it differently, provide it to the public, and sometimes charge for some of these
It's like government service
products. Yeah, exactly. So
let's take the next 40 minutes to talk about the weather app. Chenise, OPM, can you talk a little bit about?
Yes. I
Introduce yourself first. Sorry.
Chenise Mundell. I worked OPM, Office of Personnel Management. Started last year in August, so I was a probationary employee. I what we did basically was handle the disputes for the postal workers with their insurance claims. So if they disputed something on their a claim that was denied for their insurance, we looked over to make sure that the claim should have been disputed, or if we're going to agree with it or overturn it.
And Chris, USAID.
Indeed. Hi, my name is Chris Blackwood. I was a contractor with USAID. I worked there for the better part of a decade in various locations throughout the agency. Started off in the Africa Bureau and then ended my time in the Bureau for Inclusive Growth and Innovation. It was IPI.
A lot of government, you know this.
Inclusive Growth, Innovation, and Partnerships Bureau. There it is. We nailed it. I'm sure we'll edit that to make it look awesome. Ironically, my job was efficiency. So I worked to help with knowledge management and learning, help to make sure that information that we were collecting when it comes to monitoring and evaluation of our programming was intentionally incorporated into future planning to make sure that we were being as respectful with taxpayer dollars as we could. The program touched on a variety of things: education, health. I could go on.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about the work that's not being done now that you have all, you were fired. Like, I don't mean to be glib about it, but that's what Donald Trump has done, is fired hundreds of thousands of people. And so we're going to get into the impact on the work, but I want to first address a right-wing talking point just head on, if we all don't mind doing that. Is the right-wing talking point is, we don't need all these jobs. Like, who cares if, people at NOAA, why do we need communications? Why do we need someone to look at the postal workers' insurance claims? Why do we need someone to worry about internal USAID? There's, we need a Secretary of Defense and we need a Secretary of State and nothing else. Like, can someone just, what's your response to some of the right-wing folks that say, good, we should have fired all these bureaucrats, we don't need them?
Sure. I suppose you could say, like, in a car, you don't need windshield wipers. You really don't need seatbelts. You really don't need all these other parts that are in a car. But guess what? When you take away enough parts, you're really putting the people that are inside the car in danger. You're also putting others that are maybe outside the car in danger too. So it's like all of these parts, sometimes they're part of a bigger machinery that we call the U.S. government, and they all play a vital role, right? And you may be able to take parts here and there, and it may not be able to seem like it's really causing much effect, but what it really does is starts to degrade the entire engine, and eventually, like, when we talk about a car, that would be bad, right? That's why car companies sometimes do recalls. But when we talk about the U.S. government, sometimes you're going to create situations where people are going to get hurt. People may potentially die. I think with like NOAA, for example, I think you've really seen, like, with recent tragic flash floods in Texas, it's hard to kind of pinpoint, hey, did these, federal cuts, play a role in that? That's hard to pinpoint, but they may have.
The coincidences lead
Right.
to,
They may have. Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a really I haven't heard the car metaphor before, but I like that. What we were told coming in was always like scalpel, not machete, and it seems like they went even beyond the machete. They went, 10 machetes, 15 sledgehammers, and then also a bulldozer.
Well, Elon Musk literally, held a chainsaw. I mean, that was their chosen analogy. They held a chainsaw up on stage and said that, hey, we're going to take a chainsaw to the phone group. And that is exactly what happened, by the way. I mean, I don't know how you all got fired, but I mean, as far as my understanding is the way this went down to NOAA, I was a probationary employee. And my understanding is they took a huge list of probationary employees. They highlighted names on an Excel sheet, and that's how they determined who got fired. I mean, that's a chainsaw approach without very little thought to where they worked and what kind of mission they were doing. In fact, for the Hurricane, they fired almost an entire air crew from those people that work in the Hurricane Hunter aircrafts, and they had to bring some of them back because they realized,
no one else does it.
You can't fly the planes. We don't have anybody else that does it. So that was a very much chainsaw approach. So it's even hard to tell, I think, right now, as some of these government organizations try to kind of figure out what capabilities they still have left, what the true impacts are. And
how did you all experience your firings?
Yeah, I mean, I was actually fired over a Teams meeting, a pre-recorded video call. Yeah, I was in a meeting. It was a meeting that was scheduled from 1 to 2:30. I received a Teams invite to another meeting at 2:00. Said urgent, must join this meeting. Got on the meeting.
Did you know what it was before?
No, and I inboxed my supervisor, asked her if she knew what this was for. She had no idea. She told me to just hop on the call and let her know what happened. Got on the call. When I got on the call, there was a lady who was, when I joined, she was telling us that if we were part of the union, we should get our union rep on the line. And we waited about 10 more minutes. By that time, it was maybe about 75 people on the call. And someone asked her to repeat what she said. She said, well, if you're part of the union, you should get your rep online. Someone said, well, we were told we couldn't have anyone on the call. And she said, well, we're all probably about to be fired, so you should turn your cameras on, let them see. After she said that, they disabled our mics, our videos, and the chat. And we sat there for 30 minutes just waiting for someone to come. Then we got another invite to another meeting. Clicked on that meeting, and it was a pre-recorded call from, I'm assuming now it was the acting director of OPM. Basically said, this was about 2:30. He said, 3:00, your access to the system will be terminated. If you're in the building, you have 30 minutes to gather up your belongings, leave all of your government issued equipment on your desk, and exit the building. Give your badge to the security officer. And if you're working from home, which I was, he said, we'll email you at a later date and let you know how to return the equipment. Thank you for your service. Bye. And then it went on a loop and played.
And it was a recorded video?
It was a recorded video.
Wow. That is, I gotta say, that is so weak that they didn't have the courage to look people in the face,
Lacks so much humanity.
And then at 3:00, I was gone. I emailed my supervisor. She didn't know. Her supervisor didn't know. The department no one knew what was coming. And it was 75 of us that was fired.
Wow. And now I'm sure there's been other waves and that's probably, is that just your division?
Yes, that was just my.
The OPM has seen a lot more cuts.
Yeah.
Okay. And Chris?
Yeah. So, mine was crazy. It was an emotional roller coaster. So building up to the election, people were concerned, but we were told repeatedly in my bureau, particularly in my hub within my bureau, since our work is primarily around partnerships, which is all about sustainability and, again, respecting the American taxpayer. We were told repeatedly that we would be fine. And then the election happened, and we weren't allowed to talk about it because of the Hatch Act, which is just turns every work interaction into an uncomfortable improv exercise where no one's allowed to talk about the world crumbling around them. And then we started to get hints that maybe it would impact us. We were still pretty confident that we wouldn't get impacted because localization, which is an initiative I worked on, was explicitly mentioned in Project 2025. So again, we were being told repeatedly by all the leadership that we were okay. And then a week before it happened, we were told, actually, there might be some cuts. We aren't working with a lot of information. Just please keep an eye out for more info as it comes in. And then it just hit really quickly. Within, I don't know, a 24-hour period, we got a follow-up message saying that there was more information coming to stand by. And then there was a call for a group meeting, a team meeting, all of 80 of us. And that's when we were told that, yeah, all the contractors were getting let go immediately. My bureau was primarily made up of contractors. I forget what percentage, but I think around maybe like 70 or 80%. And for me, it was nuts because I was let go. And then 2 days later, I was called by my contractor, said that actually they would like me to come back because I was on something called operational expense funding, which is a loophole. And they didn't have any specific orders for that area, that category of funding. So I came back and it just felt like a very administrative version of Squid Game. Very few of my colleagues were there anymore. It went from 80 of us in my hub to about 20 of us. And at every meeting that we had, there were fewer coworkers there from the previous meeting, like every single time. There was one meeting where we had it like just convened together in the morning, just trying to figure out what was going on and what to do. Our primary strategy at that point was just to scrub anything pertaining to DEI or women or gender from all of the paperwork that we could find. And then we had a touch base later in the afternoon, and my supervisor was gone, along with a handful of other colleagues. People were just going dark with no heads up. They just could not log into their work email anymore. So that continued to happen for about a month. I hung in there. And then towards the end of that month, I was let go again and then brought back again and then finally fired a third time. So the government has turned into an F-boy from Love Island. And that has been a weird thing to navigate personally.
So you've been fired 3 times from the same place.
That's right.
Did anyone else experience these
Yeah,
false starts?
fired twice.
You're fired twice.
Hard to say because when I was fired the second time, they went backdated the second firing to the first firing. So that is still
So you've maybe been fired 2.5 times?
I don't exactly know how to process that. I know that's still kind of part of some of the legal proceedings that I think that are going on, but it was weird because I was probationary fired and then we were brought back and then we kind of hung out for a couple of months.
Well, there's a Supreme Court thing too. Like everyone's fired, but not.
Yeah, there was a couple of court cases, one here in Maryland, Maryland v. USDA, I think, or U.S. Department of Agriculture. And they kind of brought us back in this kind of like we're being paid, but non-duty status.
It's like you're paid, but don't touch anything.
Right, exactly. And then, they didn't even give us our computer access or anything back. They didn't even communicate with us. It was just like...
And you want to talk about government efficiency. That seems like you're spending the taxpayers' dollars wisely.
It was very inefficient. I even wrote them a couple of times. I'm like, hey, I'm getting paid. I'm like willing to come into work and do something, right, for my paycheck. No response.
Yeah.
Like from the no response from the organization. And then it was kind of like the Supreme Court kind of like didn't allow them to keep the preliminary injunction or the temporary restraining order. So then the organization like fired us again.
Yeah.
And then when the organization fired us again, they were like, wait, you're not being fired on this date. You are being refired on the date that we were initially fired at. And so it was all just very convoluted.
Chenise, how many times were you fired?
I was fired initially because I was a probationary employee, and then I was brought back because of the Supreme Court decision. I got one paycheck, and then I got another paycheck for $16.
Nice.
Now I've been...
Make sure you save that.
Yes, so save that. And I've been on leave without pay. I have 600 and some hours of leave without pay. I've emailed them. At one point, I was emailing them every other day to see what was going on. Nobody got back to me. So right now, from April until August 5th, I've been on leave without pay.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, and here's the thing, by the way, too. When they fired us, they or the first time, and then they brought us back, they paid us. But then when they fired us again and remade it the first date, they tried to get the money that they paid us back.
Oh, they did that to
Yeah.
last pay.
Yeah. Oh, they did that to you last pay.
Yeah, they negative.
And now my understanding is that they have fixed that and kind of said it's all good. That you don't have to pay back that money.
So just collectively
understand,
between
right.
the three of you, there's been 6 firings, and we still have one more firing left to go.
Yes, one more.
All right.
So we probably need like a chart or something.
Yeah, I love it. Feels like the red
keep track of all of this.
A Venn diagram.
Very efficient though.
So we have a super efficient government here, but the human side of this, like, you all are the human side of it. But let's first talk about why you do the work that you do, which is to serve others. Like, no one gets. I mean, most people don't get into government service unless you're the president for like self-enrichment. You're there because you care deeply about your community and public service and serving others. So, like, not just your job, but can you highlight like what's not being done? What's the impact of these mass firings in the areas that you know about? I know, Chris, I'm sure you have some things where it's real life or death for some.
Literally.
Like with Noah, the airplane thing's sticking with me, Hendrik. Like, not loving that, and like just the human aspect for our postal workers. I mean, it's not just our postal workers. The amount of government employees who are just OPM is screwing. Like, so can you guys talk a little bit about the human impact of the work not being done now because they've done these mass firings?
So I know that this podcast is called Burn the Talking Points, so we can burn these right after I read them. But I figured they were important to say when it comes to this question. So over the next 5 years, there is a projected 14 million people that will die because of the dismantling of USAID. There are estimates already of being well over 200,000 people who are already dead as a result directly of those cuts, especially children. I think at least half of them are children.
Can we just pause on that for a second?
Yeah.
Let's use some aspect of some of the stories I've read of doctors literally doing everything they can in foreign countries to save starving children, getting orders from the government to stop helping save children, and then having to make the decision: do I disobey the order, or do I, like, the lack of humanity in this? It's not just about us sitting here today, which the humanity doesn't exist.
Yeah.
The lack of humanity about the impact on others, especially USAID, like, children died in the arms of doctors because aid was stopped.
Yeah, it's extremely disheartening. And another point I think is incredibly important to make, and this is something that I don't think the average American understands, is the interconnectivity of all of this. I think it's easy for DOJ to cut USAID, easy to make that the first thing on the chopping block because it's money that's leaving the country, right? For an America First agenda, where does it fit in? And if you stay just on the surface, then that's where you arrive. But if you start to understand how we are all interconnected, how soft power, American soft power, is what has kept us out of wars. It is what has prevented countless amounts of violent extremism, creating education centers, giving people an opportunity for success instead of to go another way, preventing diseases from coming into this country. It is absolutely an America First agenda to have foreign aid. And the consequences that we're all going to face are, insurmountable.
People are already experiencing the consequences. The consequences for America down the line. Like, it's similar to what Hendrik was saying first. So, like, can we directly connect it to this? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
There's going to be instances in the future where direct impacts of the cuts of foreign aid are going to reverberate on our soil, and it'll be pointed out, and we'll be told we're insane pointing it out.
Absolutely.
So real quick, I'm so glad you mentioned that soft power because, again, I mentioned earlier, did my career 24 years in the Navy. I spent a lot of that career actually in the Indo-Pacific and also in the Middle East. So I've seen firsthand, like, where our humanitarian relief efforts in a lot of those countries, or assistance that we provide for those countries, provides a lot of that soft power, provides us that kind of edge in diplomacy in those, like, very important parts of the region that are critical to our national security. So one of the things I don't think is being talked about enough, and I'm glad you mentioned it, is just even if you have this extreme view that we do not care about saving lives in other countries, that, you know, all that should be invested here in the United States. The very reality is it really, what they did, it really weakens our national security and actually puts us in a position in the United States where we're weaker, we're less safer in the world, where it gives opportunities to our adversaries to really exploit now, because our adversaries will likely move into a lot of these countries where we don't have the soft power. And it also, you know, and it also, in the end, again, it just kind of, like everything else, puts more American lives in danger. And also, weirdly enough, I think in the end, it also puts our economic, our economic power in danger here in the U.S.
Well, I don't think we have to worry about economic power because the Trump will put in a Bureau of Labor Statistics the statistician and just tell us everything is great. So
Exactly.
no, economics check. We're all good. We have 10 million new jobs next month.
Can I just say 2 more talking points that I will burn promptly after this? Okay, so soft power index projections suggest that the U.S. will fall from number 1 to at least number 4 globally by 2030, seeing influence to China, the EU, and others. And that is something I have seen overseas, traveling throughout Africa. You see, Chinese influence almost everywhere you go now. And now, I mean, they're loving this. This is the opportunity for them. It's the best thing we could have done for China and Russia. Also, there is a point for economic hurt that we're going to face now because of USAID being dismantled. So because of USAID, it boosted U.S. influence globally. For every $1 in USAID funding, U.S. businesses gain $1.80 in future exports to those regions. So it is crucial for business as well. Also, it has impacted the American farmer.
Yeah.
A lot of the food that is going overseas, 500 tons of which was recently burned, or it will be burnt, which is an insane thing to say out loud. This is giving farmers business. And without this business, many of them are going to be, without an opportunity to sell that food. They have surplus amounts of it, so it won't go anywhere else.
Yeah.
I can burn the rest.
Well, should we burn it like right here, or is that permissible? Or
that would be awesome. That would be a great gimmick if we just burn something each time. But I want to talk about the human impact on you as well as your coworkers and community as well. Chenise, can you talk a little bit about you could talk about the paycheck part. That part, I think, hopefully is obvious to everyone that like not getting a paycheck has a direct impact. I mean, unless you have like a massive trust fund, and that, congratulations. If you do, would be very happy. By the way, donate.mddems.org. You can throw it in there. But no, just joking. What's like the human impact? Talk about the paycheck side, but beyond the paycheck, there's so many waterfall effects.
Yeah. The paycheck part, everybody should know that that's just a given. I had to apply for unemployment. Unemployment is like $400 a week, so that is like my maybe covering my mortgage. So, that part is a given. But what I have discovered recently in like the past month and a half, like trying to look for a job is that's a task in itself. But to have, like you said, 12,000, I didn't know that was that many people in Maryland that was affected by the firing. So imagine trying to find a job now in this economy. I have applied for at least 2 to 3 jobs every day. Nothing. Just this past week, I got a return. A recruiter reached out to me, so maybe that's a possible interview. But mentally, the toll that it's taken on me, knowing that I was fired, through no.
Yeah.
It's not any of my doing. I wasn't performing badly, but to have that put on your record and, to try to stay positive. I have kids, my youngest son just graduated high school. So
congrats.
Thank you. But that was like it was dimmed. I didn't feel like I could celebrate the way that I wanted. I would have been able to if I didn't have all this other stuff on my mind. Like I just felt like the past month I've just been like in a depression. Yeah. And just to look at how people don't know that there are federal workers that are taking their lives that are, because of the position they've been put in through no fault of their own, through a government that said they want to help someone, but you're firing everyone, taking away their health care, taking away their, this is their livelihoods. This is how they support their families. So it's been a lot.
I had a kid. Building up to this, I mean, when I was fired the first time, he was 2 months out from being born, and now he is here, and that has been a trip. This was not a thing that we budgeted into having a child, and frankly, it's not sustainable. So still trying to figure out what we're going to do. It is hard to be present with my child at home when at the same time I need to figure out what I'm doing with my life now at the age of 42. I mean, everything I've done professionally outside of, my comedy side hustle, I have poured into international development. I went to grad school for it. I went to a specialized niche grad school specifically focused in international development, which means nothing now. I did not have on my bingo card my entire career path being annihilated. But yeah, it's just this crazy moment where I feel like I need to kind of go back to square one. I'm applying for jobs where I'd be making $22 an hour without benefits, teaching ESL, which is something I did 20 years ago. And that's not going to cut it. So yeah, it's real tough. I am grateful that I have, this comedy side hustle, to both, provide a form of therapy for me. Although I would recommend actual therapy, as well. If you can afford it, even as you can afford it, figure it out. Yeah. So it's nice to have an outlet, but I feel like that's kind of, that's all I have right now. That and my son, who's a excellent distraction from it all. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry again that you're all going through this, and I'm glad you're able to kind of illuminate some of the human impacts of this and not just, I've seen some glib things online and newspapers and interviews of like, why do government workers think they're just guaranteed a paycheck? And like, I don't think anyone on this panel here or any, common sense person thinks like anyone's guaranteed a paycheck. If you're bad at your job, you should be fired. That's not why you were fired. Right. You were fired because a very, very rich man asked another very, very rich man to cut the government. And the way they chose to do it was this humanless chainsaw way, which is now having real ripple effects that they don't want to deal with and refuse to acknowledge that human beings are on the other side of this, unless those human beings, one, are Republican. And even Republicans, we're seeing a lot of outcry of like, I was a government worker, Mr. Trump, please save me.
Yeah.
And, some are getting saved because it's case-by-case basis, which is an insane way to govern.
Yeah, and for me, man, that's what you just said right there is still very hard for me to process, and this is part of the reason why I'm here, and I hope people understand, like, the federal government has a process for things, right? And absolutely, if you're bad at your job or you're not doing your job, right, you should get fired. But that is not what's happening here. On one hand, they've kind of gone out there and they've portrayed us federal employees and probationary employees, as these people that weren't like, that we were just waste, that we weren't doing like a good job. In fact, a lot of our termination letters says that we were fired because of performance. And that is such a big lie, because myself, I had just received a performance review for, quote, being an exemplary performer, and I'm sure I know a lot of other federal employees done, but they keep trying to sell this like that. Oh, they were terrible performers. And that is not the case. That's not what happened here. The only reason they're doing it that way is because we're probationary employees. And for those people out there who don't know, probationary employees doesn't mean that you're like you did anything bad. A probationary employee just means you might be in your first year of government or your second year of government, where you're still kind of in this
or you transfer job.
Yeah, or you transfer with the government. In fact, my boss at NOAA also got fired, and she got fired because she got essentially promoted a level up. And that made her a probationary employee again. So that's a high performer that got fired, because they performed too well. They got promoted, became probationary again. that is that's really what happened here. They didn't actually take into account anybody's performance record or the mission that they were doing. So all of this is a lie, and that just, man, that is what hurts my soul. Again, as a veteran who served, our country, who, and as most service members do, you're out there defending our democracy. You are defending our laws, our processes, our way of life. And then to have the government, pretty much completely violate its own rules and norms and laws to do this is just, it's crushing.
Yeah. Could not agree more. Let's talk a little bit forward looking as much as we can. Who have you seen fighting for you that, you're like, oh, okay, maybe there are people on our side. Has that been anyone? I legitimately don't know from your seat, because I've seen town halls, I've seen different things, and I don't know. Are those helpful? Is it at this point, are you town halled out? Are there elected leaders, local leaders, community leaders? You're like, they're real. They're the ones fighting.
There's some elected leaders I've seen who have spoken out, against the USAID cuts. Jamie Raskin is one. Cory Booker is another. So yeah, there are certainly people out there who are being vocal. I mean, foreign aid has been a bipartisan issue since the beginning of foreign aid. It has never been politicized like it has been now. Yeah, I mean, there are people on both sides of the aisle who are speaking out, which is nice. I'll also say there are, many people from USAID who are in my situation who are looking for meaning, for something to do with their time, more than just a job, but meaning. And out of that, there have been a variety of initiatives that have come out, like the One Aid Community, the USAID Solidarity Fund, Crisis and Care, that are all designed both to, support USAID employees in the case of the USAID Solidarity Fund, or Crisis and Care to help fill the gap of aid and help get some funding for people who are suffering from HIV around the world. So yeah, there are certainly people who are standing up and fighting. It doesn't feel like a fraction of enough, but, people are doing what they can, it seems.
Yeah, I agree. I look at it as, I know a lot of people say we're in unprecedented times. This is literally unprecedented times. So I don't want to say, well, this person is not doing enough, because there's so much.
Yeah.
There's so many lawsuits going on. There's so many things that's happened that you kind of don't know where to start. So I'm hoping that everybody is doing what they can do to help. But Senator Van Hollen, Senator Alsobrooks, Jamie Raskin, I've seen them speak out, Jasmine Crockett, the people that are vocal, but I just don't know what people are doing behind the scenes. So hopefully they're, speaking out as well.
Yeah, I agree. For me, I think Senator Van Hollen's has been I think very helpful. I think a group of us went down to the Senate, and actually he came out and he talked to us for a little bit. And I've also seen him show up at certain events. Same thing with Representative Raskin. I think has been very fiery, very vocal, showing up for events, engaged. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's
so. I have two questions I want to get to, but I do want to end with a game if you're all willing to play a game. But one of the questions I have, and this is going to get a little wonky for folks, so stick with me. Something called Schedule F, which essentially says bureaucrats, not to use it in a pejorative way, but bureaucrats are apolitical. They're there to do the job. They stay with one administration, and the next administration comes, they stay, and they keep doing the job to make sure our government has people who run our government. And they don't worry about politics. They worry about achieving the goals of, the agency. One of the proposals that was in Project 2025, as well as starting to sort of be implemented, is to essentially do away with apolitical government workers and have just all political appointees. Now, we tried that way back in the 1800s, and it was a disaster. Unfortunately, we don't learn from history, but the Trump administration seems to want every government worker, not just the Secretary of State and his deputy, but every government worker, whether they're, working at NOAA, working at OPM, working at USAID, to be political. What would that mean for our government if that were to become the norm?
It would be a monarchy. It wouldn't be a democracy anymore. I mean, I think the strength in government largely comes from the diversity of people within it who represent the citizens of the country. And it would no longer look like that. It would be a direct reflection of who is in charge. And that's when things become really dangerous and ineffective. So,
I mean, I can imagine a postal worker who is a registered Republican getting an insurance payout, and a postal worker who's a registered Democrat not getting one under a Trump administration.
Kind of like what's happening now with the Department of Justice, dismissing a lot of the lawsuits that they had pending, and the black farmers with their aid, being not following through with what they were promised. So it's kind of like
now we're looking every agency,
like we're looking like now with they have the Supreme Court, so they're going to rule on cases that they deem in favorable of Donald Trump, because that's what they're doing now, because he put them there. So it is very dangerous.
Yeah. Let's talk about the impacts going forward for you all. How has this experience kind of changed your view of civic engagement, political engagement? Are you planning to do anything different going forward, like in terms of donating, running, participating? Like, has this changed the way that you view civic engagement?
It has for me. It definitely has. For me, I used to always, and I look at it this way too, with just your normal everyday citizen. Before this happened to me, I really had no reason to be engaged civically. I mean, I gave money to campaigns and organizations that I, supported, but to actually have something affect me, it's different. It's personal, and for me, I want to run for Congress. So my representative, Andy Harris, is, there's been no town halls. He had one over the phone, which you had to send in your questions. And I guess he fielded those questions, so you couldn't ask him anything. And I've emailed him numerous times. I've called his office. All I get back is, actually, I got an auto reply this morning saying that he agrees with basically everything, the big, beautiful bill, everything. Trump has a mandate. When he was elected, he got a mandate to do what he basically wanted to do, which I don't agree with that either. And he has not, provided any assistance if you agree with what's going on at your constituents. I didn't vote for you, but I'm still your constituent. You should reach out to me. You should provide some assistance. If you agree with what's going on, you need to help us get back to be productive members of the.
I mean, it's almost this whole idea of, if the entire workforce becomes political, they all become like the Congress people that will help those that voted for them and won't help those that didn't vote for them.
Exactly.
So I think an important factor of that is the federal agencies, or all the different programs and offices, they're there to help Americans regardless of what political party you're in, and that is just so. Man, that is so important. And I think
it's like the bedrock of government.
Right. That is really the bedrock of government. And I think, to like your earlier question, if you get, I think it is, I mean, okay, every agency, I get it. Like, after a political party wins, they're going to put their political appointees. But if you overdo that, then it really becomes a government, every 4 years we have a government that's for the Democrats, and then 4 years later it might be a government that's for the Republicans, and it really divides us weirdly into two nations. And I think it also reduces the faith people will have in democracy and in our government to serve them. I just see chaos potentially ensuing, but I'm glad you're running.
Thank you.
In response to your question about civic engagement, so it absolutely has made me more civically involved. I alluded to it earlier, but I run a nonprofit at the intersection of comedy and civic engagement, which has always been like kind of a fun side thing that I have hoped one day might turn into a full-time thing. This has expedited that, that thought. Actually, I was getting ready to hand it off to somebody else. Like when I was actually let go, literally I was in a conversation with somebody who I was interviewing to be the next executive director of this nonprofit. But yeah, this has changed everything. Not only do I not have a job and don't seem to have many other options, but also I feel like it has never been more important than right now to engage people on what is really going on, to cut through the noise through a medium like comedy, which has been proven time and time again to be a highly impactful tool to get people to listen, to pay attention, to serve as sort of an entryway to a dialogue. So because of that, I've been very active with that. I've produced 3 shows now, one for furloughed feds called Fed Up. And then we have...
I love it, Paul.
Yeah, thank you very much. And then we had another one for the USAID Solidarity Fund. And we actually have a show coming up, shameless plug, the end of this month, August 30th, in downtown DC for the Crisis and Care fundraiser, which is going to be for getting funding to, like I mentioned earlier, people who have been impacted by the massive cuts to HIV worldwide. So,
is there a pun-based name for that show?
Unfortunately, no. It's the comedy show for the lives that USAID can't save anymore. So more sad than punny, but there are pretty plenty of puns in the show. And jokes better than puns. I don't like puns personally. It's not
like the height of comedy.
Yeah, one might argue it's the opposite. But anyway, so that's been keeping me busy, and I feel like I have never been more motivated to be engaged with it than right now. Probably won't be running for political office, but I will be increasingly engaged in getting the message out to people about what's really happening with places like USAID, and engaging other people in that process of advocating through medium of comedy.
So it's fair to say for all 3 of you, this experience has increased your civic engagement. You may have already been engaged, but this has kind of added a whole new element.
Absolutely. I think for me, it's definitely, increased for me the desire to want to be more civically engaged. Yeah. I'm not sure, man, I know you're you've got your comedy thing going on. For me, I think it's I just don't know yet exactly what that means for me. So I think I'm still...
But I'm sure there's a hyper awareness on how everything's connected, how it's impacting.
And I think for me, one of the biggest concerns that I have in society right now, which may lead to me doing a certain type of civic engagement, I am just really concerned about the amount of disinformation, that is out there. Just this kind of the fact that in our kind of society right now is fracturing because you have, I don't know, this thing called reality, right? And then, but you have these this rhetoric that people are putting out there that is just completely bonkers,
I mean, we're in a post-truth world.
Yeah, post-truth world. You have actual politicians who are supposed to be these responsible, elected people, out there talking about weather modification machines and whatnot. It's a mystery to me. People either end up believing that stuff or they end up buying into some of that stuff, and I don't understand why, but I think that is a big problem that in our society right now that requires more civic engagement in.
Yeah, could not agree more. I appreciate all 3 of you sharing it. So each episode we like to end with a bit of a game, if you're willing to play. If not a problem, but we'll throw it out there. I want to play a game that we're calling Fired for What? I'm going to give you some federal workers, and as former federal workers, I want you to tell me, do these folks deserve to be fired? And if so, why should they be fired? Because unlike Donald Trump, we're going to fire them for cause. You ready to play?
Yes.
Here's your first one. Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense. Should he be fired?
Yeah.
We got a yes?
Yes.
But why?
He doesn't know how to use Signal.
So Signal mishaps on paper. Yeah. Next one, Marco Rubio,
Wait, that's the only reason?
I mean, there were. Do you have more? I think. How much time do we have here?
Yeah. So on peak Hexeth, I don't know. Maybe it's because I was in the military for so long. I don't think it's my place to say whether he should be fired or not. But I will say the thing with Signalgate and the leaking of what was obviously classified information on.
I mean, they think we're dumb if they.
I mean,
find that excuse.
That to me, as a service member, as a person who still has friends that are out there, who has friends that were actually deployed in that region when all that happened, I think that, man, that I really wish that he would just kind of take accountability for that and kind of speak the truth there.
That will never.
But I still think it's a good thing that the DoD IG is investigating that
until this fire
comes out. Until they, yeah.
Next one, Secretary of State and National Security Advisor and 7 other things. Marco Rubio. Should he be fired?
Yes. So much so. Marco Rubio has been particularly frustrating for me because he was actually an advocate, a strong advocate for U.S. aid and foreign aid. And now all of a sudden his balls have completely disappeared.
It's almost like he's corrupt now.
Yeah, weird. Every time I see him, it's like he's doing the Homer Simpson backup blushes. So he should be fired for not having balls. I don't know if that is the official, could be the official reason, but
But whatever.
He has no spine. He doesn't stick up for things that he has stuck up.
So he's lacking several body
He's
parts.
lacking several body parts.
He's one of the federal workers that they think we are. Actually not working.
That's and instead of firing him, they have given him like 5 jobs.
Yeah.
He has the infinite DRP, deferred resignation, so they're just paying him to just sit and do.
That's good.
He's great at sitting.
Let me ask this one. I mean, I don't know what will end up here. Trump spokesperson Caroline Levit, should she be fired? I mean, she's honestly very good at that.
Yes, she does her job really well.
Yeah, I have not seen someone shamelessly lie this well, and I don't think she believes it. Maybe she does, but there doesn't seem to be a ton of like humanity behind the eyes.
As a communication specialist, I would really actually like to know the answer to that question, whether she actually believes the stuff she says or whether it's just she's just doing her job.
I mean, that's the scary part. In Trump, like version 1, I think we all knew none of that actually believed what they said. They were all like smart enough to know they were just bullshitting. I think some of them actually believe the lies they've told themselves now. It's been long enough that they believe the lies.
Yeah, I think you might have to. I think it might be like a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
After a while, you just have to convince yourself that it's true.
So are we at, she should keep her job because she's so damn good at it.
If the job is to be the advocate for the devil, she's nailing it.
She
wears that cross around her neck.
There was one day she didn't wear the cross and people were like joking that it must have been burning or something.
Last one, Donald Trump. Does he deserve to be fired?
He's deteriorating before our eyes every day.
Yeah, I mean, is he even all there?
No.
He hasn't been
He's
since.
a convicted felon. He is, I mean, I don't know. How much time do we have? No, he should not have ever gotten the job. He should be fired. It's amazing that he's even allowed to have the job in the first place. Like, yes.
I mean,
fired.
The thing is, I think, like, the thing is the American people, I mean, they hired him, for better or worse. But, I think now, I mean, I've probably seen a lot online, a lot of, people who voted for him coming out and saying, oh man, I didn't vote for this. I didn't vote for that. Like they were seemingly unaware, which to me says a lot about like just
information,
right? What we were talking about earlier. But I think the question of whether or not he should be fired, that might be a question for cabinet if they want to invoke
25th.
25th Amendment. I think that's a question also for Congress. And ultimately, at some point, I don't know. I think in the midterms, I think the
American people will need to send a very clear message.
We'll vote, for that.
Congressman
if
Green,
Republicans don't cheat.
And can I also just say, since no one said it before in this conversation, I'd love to see the Epstein files. Let's make sure that stays afloat as an issue,
it's
right?
Crazy
that might be our thing.
It's crazy that's what's disqualifying.
It's both crazy and actually very logical if you think about it.
Yeah. I think for me, it's crazy, and the disturbing part of that is now watching some people who are just, very, protective of the president, like really change the talking points on that in disturbing ways that I don't even want to talk about here. But, you know, into being all of a sudden like, oh, you know, so what if he, you know.
I mean, I think the term they use a lot is skating to where the puck is going, but
Yeah.
Megaland knows how to telegraph where he's going to go so they can get there first and make sure
Right.
their supporters feel comfortable where it lands. And
Interesting.
it's a really scary thing that we're in the middle of. But
What did you call that?
skating to where the puck is going, the hockey term where you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, it's been a really, really engaging and interesting conversation. And it's unfortunate that we had to have this conversation. I'd rather you all be at your day job, you know, helping people and saving lives. But alas, we made a choice as this country to elect the dumbest person we have.
Yeah.
And he made a decision to fire a lot of people. So the fact that you're able to come on here and willing to share your opinions and thoughts, really appreciate it. It's not every day you get to talk to 3 members of the deep state. So thank you all for being here. And everyone, make sure you stick around for future episodes. And anything that we mention, we'll make sure we drop in the show notes that people want to see. Thanks so much.